Well, good morning, folks. This is a public service announcement brought to you by Rudy J. Camarillo from an undisclosed location. Hey, I just want to address gross negligence and harassment by authorities in this country. You know, we all know what I've been through the last 5 years and growing. Well, it kind of got my goat. The other day, January 22nd, in the year of our Lord 2020, I was in contact with the Omaha FBI, and it came to an abrupt end when they hung up on me. Now, the unprofessionalism I've been dealing with this last 5 years, lack of constitutional rights, damages to my family, emotional and financial distress, is beyond measure. So I'm contacting them, and I addressed gross negligence and the fact that I went to Washington, D.C., at which point the lady became upset with me and hung up on me. Well, if you know anything about the chain of command and the way the Constitution operates, if somebody's not abiding by the Constitution and you're reporting violations, threats to your safety, security, damages to your family, and beyond measurable unlawful actions, they should probably be looked into by the Omaha F.B.I. That was my 34th contact to them, and they were upset that I went above them in the chain of command. After 34 contacts over the last 2 years. Now, everybody knows what I've been through in the Midwest, the harassment, intimidation daily. They infiltrated and impeded upon my workplaces, my homes, through roommates, surveillance, illegal, unlawful, across the freaking board. Now, I gave them time. I gave them 5 years of my life, my children, careers, everything, to which they just capitalized on for defamation, based on the emotional distress which they caused. It really got my goat. That's all I'm trying to say is the Midwest, the judiciary system is completely out of whack. Now, I moved from there. I had to leave my beloved God-given children to escape the daily emotional distress and harassment that was not hindered. All I went to the FBI for several years ago was to say, hey, make this stop. It doesn't need to be malicious. They're the ones being malicious. Let's just make it stop so I can go on with my quality of life and be restored. Well, they couldn't do that. So I eventually had to leave my beloved children and travel. I went to Salt Lake City. Well, they were in on it right off the bat, too. Now I'm down in Las Vegas. It continued, and I still reside here. They have time to embrace me, so I won't go much further there. They've laid off the last week. But what it comes down to is the unconstitutional violation or the constitutional violations, the policy and procedure being violated daily for years is atrocious. And for people to judge me based on emotional distress caused by all this is totally un American, unethical, and immoral. I mean, could you imagine going from a workplace that was being used for entrapment, surveillance, defamation daily, to a home that was being used for the exact same thing day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year? I did that. I lived that. I survived that. And I thought the abuse would quit when I left, but it hasn't. The judgment hasn't been hindered. And when I reach out to say, is there anything being done? You know, I'm a humble man. I'm a master of compromise. That's all this requires is compromise to restore my family. All I ask after an unlawful arrest, unlawful termination, and many other violations, which I can't even address right here on this video, was said, hey, just give me restoration for my children and I. We got some people in some bad boats around them. I'm the only support in this world right now, and I'm the only one that can help them develop into good Americans and good human beings. Give me that back, and perhaps even a firefighter job, because at the time I was unlawfully terminated from the state, I was up in line waiting for my final interview with the fire department. So for them to go off the defamation of that, I was a state employee and I was in line to freaking get on the fire department, does that sound like a man that is up to no good, that deserved all this and this judgment stuff? Don't get me wrong. I have sin in my life. There's things that I wish I could undo and never would have happened, really in the distant past. But for them to take isolated sin and compile it all from years into one and base that on my character and my character on that and call it defamation is totally atrocious, not to mention illegal. So what I'm getting at here is something needs to be made done. We're going to escalate very quickly. I'm tired of being the center of scrutiny, defamation, and judgment. This is absolutely ludicrous. While these other people are allowed to sin and violate their constitutional oaths in the statements, the mission statements that they promised to abide by at one point in time. At one point in time, these people that are violating my Constitution, whether it be the 4th, 5th, 6th, 9th constitutional right, by the way, you won't take my first constitutional right, here I am. You got to remember, you put your left hand on the Bible at one point, and you raised your right hand in front of the American flag and swore to abide and uphold that Constitution that you have been violating consistently. At what point was the well poisoned? At what point? At what point did you lose integrity in that? Yeah, this is just a public service announcement. I'm tired of not being heard, and I will not go through a 6th year like this. If you couldn't humbly figure out a way to compromise and restore my family, which has been unlawfully taken, which I could prove time after time, whether it be through false documentation or just straight up overstepping your boundaries based on personal opinion. If you can't figure out how to make that right, we need to take this into the open. You got to remember, I tried keeping a national story in-house. 5 years of unlawful harassment, intimidation. I mean, you really can't take that back. It is a national case. Absolutely. You will never find anything that's happened this atrociously with the longevity and severity of these trespasses. And for me to sit here and ask for simple, humble restoration and you not comply because you can't swallow your humanistic emotions such as pride, animosity, jealousy, that's a problem. And then I bet you have something negative to say, but I haven't heard anything. Just a bunch of shadow workers, right? If the FBI would have properly conducted themselves, went through the list of names I gave them with the list of questions, swore them in, said, hey, it's a federal offense to lie to me, just tell me the truth. I mean, they can go into any department, any chief, any captain in the Midwest and figure out what's going on as long as they're honest. This has been atrocious. I'm done not being heard. You can take all my rights, but you will not take my First Amendment. Unless one of you shadow workers follow through with the threats that you've been placing on me for years, which at this point, as a freedom fighter and a man that loves his family, his Constitution, I will not let you mess with my faith, family, freedom, finances anymore. Not to mention, we won't go down the religious manipulation road, but when you step into a church and you start manipulating pastors and working with them, I mean, we got some serious, atrocious violations here. Yeah. If you're in a position with the authority over man to do God's work, do God's work. Don't play God. God plays those whom play God. God bless.